Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here today with another episode of the Planar Project. Today we're going to be looking at the latest product from our friends at Simgot. This has been a long time in the making, and it's finally ready for prime time. I'm talking, of course, about the Simgot ET142, a new planar IEM from Simgot priced at $220 US. This is using the same driver configuration as the now discontinued Raptgo Hook X. With its 4 nozzles and promises of different tunings, this has the potential, I think, to shake up the planar market by providing a sort of all-in-one solution. But does it pull that off? Well, that's what we're going to find out today. Fair warning, I'm going to talk a lot about the state of the planar IEM market as a whole, and this IEM has different tunings, so this is going to be a bit of a long one. As usual, feel free to make use of the timestamps here at the bottom that I provided. If not, go ahead and sit back, grab a cup of coffee, or whatever it is you prefer to drink, and let's get into it. But first, a little bit of a disclaimer. This set of the ET142 was sent to me by Simgot not for review, but as a pre-production sample. They essentially picked a bunch of reviewers, sent out a bunch of pre-production samples, and asked people what they thought about the sound. I and a bunch of other people gave them some feedback, and after a while, they made some changes to the product, resulting in this final retail version that I have here. I'm not being paid for this review, and my opinions are my own, but because I could turn around and sell this if I wanted, I have gone ahead and activated the paid promotion feature here on YouTube. I do these disclaimers because I believe in full transparency when there's potential bias besides my own personal tastes at play. I would also like to point out that because I was kind of sort of maybe involved with this product as a prototype, there might be some additional bias here, so go ahead and factor that in as you watch this video. I'd like to thank Simgot so much for sending me this set and asking me what my thoughts were on it, along with some of my other peers. That's the first time it's ever happened to me, pretty big deal. I'd also like to thank all of you for watching the video, because if it wasn't for y'all, this would not have happened, so thank y'all very much. We'll kick things off, as is typical for me, with the unboxing experience. As you'll see, there are some changes from the original unboxing that I did. That's the reason I uploaded a whole new unboxing video for the retail packaging. But inside the box, you'll find the IEMs themselves, along with 3 additional nozzles. So these are all 4. I went ahead and put them on this card for convenience. The titanium sort of burnished ones are the ones that come on the IEM as stock. These gold ones come in a little baggie in one of the boxes. And then this sort of metal nozzle holder holds the 2 variants of the short nozzles. You can see one has a red O-ring and one has a black O-ring. And if you look, you can see they have foam inside them, and you can sort of see the densities on those foams are different. So you get 4 nozzles. Along with those 4 nozzles, you get O-rings in case you lose them or need to replace the ones that come on there. So you get 4 sets of O-rings for each set of nozzles. And for the shorter nozzles, you also get replacement foams for those in case you happen to lose those, so that's good. You also get a really nice silver case. I believe it's the exact same one you get on the EA1000. I really like this case. We'll talk about it in a minute. Inside the case, you will find the modular Simgot LC7 upgrade cable. And finally, you get 3 sets of ear tips. You get the standard sort of Simgot black and clear silicone in a standard bore size. You get a orange and black silicone with a slightly wider bore on them. And you get these short ear tips that also have wider bores. They're just a different profile than the other 2. The case I actually really like. It has a magnetic clasp on it. It's sturdy. It will sort of crush protect your IEMs. As I mentioned, it has a Simgot sort of slogan on the bottom. The inside of the case has a mesh little pouch that I honestly don't know what you could fit in here. It's very tight, maybe like an SD card or something else really small. These loops are here are really convenient. You can hold the modular end for the LC7 cable in there. It comes with a cable tie. It says salute to art and science, which is really nice. Yeah, I haven't found anything to put in that little mesh pocket, but I really like this case. I've been using it a lot, sort of outside of the review work. Overall, I think this is a really good set of accessories for $220, and I'm very happy with the inclusions. The only things I think of that are missing would be like a cleaning brush or a cloth and like a shirt clip, but you don't typically see those at all in IEMs at this price point, so the lack of those here doesn't really put any points against this. So let me get this out of the way, and we'll take a closer look at that included LC7 cable that comes with these. So this is Simgot's LC7 modular upgrade cable, available separately for purchase for $70 US. It's a chunky sort of two-wire twist that breaks up into individual conductors at the Y-split. It is modular. You get the 3.5 millimeter and 4.4 millimeter balanced connectors in the package. The connectors have the Simgot branding on them and a little dot to help you line it up with the notch here. So just line up the dot with a notch and there you go. The end here is, as you can see, slightly indented, which makes this a good grab point for pulling it out of heavy amps or players. The Y-split is also metal, doesn't have any branding on it, but I think it matches the rest of the kit quite nicely. The chin slider is a sort of open loop of metal that slides up and down effortlessly, so you're going to have to put some tension on that to get it to stick in place. The 2-pin connectors are also that nice metal, and the labeling here shows up a whole lot better on camera than it does in person. I think it's a bit hard to read in person, but once you get it connected, you should be able to leave it in place. Overall, the cable feels really nice in the hands. The plastic coating doesn't come across as overly sticky or rubbery. It's not microphonic at all. It behaves well. It's a very nice cable. It is a little bit weighty. I think it comes in at 43 grams, but I didn't find it to be as cumbersome as the Manta cable on the High Senior Mega 5 EST. That said, it is a bit weighty, so if you don't like heavier cables, you might want to swap this one out. I quite like it, especially for an IEM at this price point. Let's take a closer look at how these are put together. The ET142s here are full metal shells, very, very nice construction. The nozzles, of course, are removable. The nozzles feature different mesh there, as well as some of them have damping material inside them to adjust the tuning. In terms of ventilation, you've got the one vent there on the sort of front of the IEM for the front volume. You've got another vent there on the side over next to the 2-pin connector. I didn't experience any driver flex or pressure buildup issues with these due to those vents. I think it's a good design. In terms of other sort of mechanical features, there aren't really any. There's this like chamfered edge here with the Simgot logo that looks quite nice. And you have this screw here on the top that sort of holds the two halves together. Other than that, I think this is built very similarly to other Simgot IEMs. The seam between the top and the bottom halves of the IEM is a little bit prominent. It's not sharp, and it's not going to get caught on anything. It feels very smooth to the hands. It's not going to feel bad in the ear. The gap is uniform, so I don't really mind it too much. It's just something that I noticed. But yeah, overall, as far as we've seen, Simgot's metal IEMs seem to hold up pretty well. I expect this one to last for a while. I think it's pretty well built. So let's check out the specifications. The ET142 is powered by a 12.5 millimeter planar driver and a multi-layer ceramic piezoelectric tweeter. Simgot say that the planar has a symmetric magnetic grid design. Now, I wonder if that means it has dual coils as well as dual magnets. If it does indeed have dual coils, then I would expect this driver to be a sort of cousin to the one that's in the Letshuoer S08 and like the HC Sound Luna. In terms of drivability, this is actually an extremely easy IEM to drive. The very high sensitivity and the 14 ohm impedance meant that I had no issues pushing this with my old Sony Xperia phone or my CD player even. The nozzles are just a tiny bit wider than 6 millimeters, and the length on those nozzles varies from 3.2 on the short ones to 4.9 millimeters on the longer ones. These IEMs are the second heaviest shells in my collection, and if you add in the cable, this becomes the heaviest overall combination of IEM and cable in my collection, edging out the Mega 5 EST base by about 5 grams. That cable, by the way, has a resistance of 0.4 ohms, but it shouldn't matter too much because the sound signature here isn't affected by increases in output impedance or impedance adapters or, high resistance cables. So, yeah, no sound changes that I graphed or noticed by listening. But yeah, other than the addition of the PZT tweeter here, the specs on these is fairly standard, I would say, for a full sort of metal-bodied planar IEM. Nothing too outlandish. But now it's time for the cool wall. Plain metal shells are fairly standard-looking as a general rule. It's also the case that Simgot tends to stick to pretty similar tried-and-true shapes for their IEMs. The Shark, the Maze, and the XO all have vaguely similar shapes. The same can be said for like all three versions of the EA500 and the Supermix 4. ET142 is a bit of a break in tradition. I really like this deep chamfered edge and the different overall sort of profile. The funnel, if you will, that leads to the nozzle is a different shape than it is to some of the other ones. Uh, I do like the Simgot branding on the chamfered edge. It's simple, but I think it works well. As you can tell, the stainless steel here is 100% a fingerprint magnet. I feel like I'm always constantly wiping it down to try and make it look its best. Um, Part of me thinks this is a cool design. Part of me thinks it's kind of bland. I'm going to go ahead and be nice to it and stick it in cool, if only because of that chamfered edge and the kind of futuristic, look of it as a whole. I think it does look pretty slick, but honestly, if I were filming this a different day, it might have ended up in bland. But we all know no one cares what I think. Instead, let's see how the ET142 stacks up against the Council of Ladies. We're going to open things up with a split verdict. 2 pretties, 2 not pretties, and a meh, I would say, is about as average as you can get with the Council. We'll go ahead and move on and see compliments. It's a 3-2 verdict against giving them out, which I would say kind of tracks. I guess the meh vote converted into a no. And finally, here are their thoughts. It's interesting to me that 2 separate ladies thought of golf clubs completely independently. And thinking about it, I guess the ET142 kind of does look like the head on a driver. So yeah, that's interesting. I'd never thought of that. The shiny metal finish was pretty appreciated by the ladies. So overall, I would say a mixed bag. Let's chat about comfort real quick. While these shells and the cable are fairly weighty, I didn't feel like they were necessarily uncomfortable for me. The general shape is also smaller than you would think by just sort of looking at them. They're not actually all that massive in ear, at least to me. The funnel, like I said, that leads to the nozzles is at an angle that lets me get a deeper fit really, really easily. I wore these for a 5-hour gaming session with some friends online. We were listening to music the whole time. I had 0 issues with these. Who did have issues with these, however, was my wife. The weight combined with the sort of weight of the cable caused them to sort of pull down and fall out of her ears really easily. It resulted in a failure on the tiny ears test. I do think swapping the cable to something that has more narrow radius ear hooks would help, as it would distribute the weight along her ear more evenly, and it also might not cause weight to be pulling down on the IEM. But I don't review, aftermarket cables. I only review the stock configuration. So with the stock configuration, these failed the tiny ears test. Okay, time to start talking about how these sound. Before I get started, as I said, 4 different nozzles. I'm going to do my best job to describe all 4 sounds. They are different, so be patient with me. I apologize if this segment winds up being extremely long, but as usual, we'll go ahead and start off with the low end. The ET142 here has definitely got what I like to call planar bass. The deep sub-bass drops in Tiesto's split collab with the Chainsmokers have a really nice rumble to them. You can feel that 13mm planar moving some decent air in your ears. It's not overblown, it's not extremely, thick, but it's nice and satisfying, and it has the right amount of texture to it, in my opinion. The same goes for the mid-bass drops on that same track. They're nice and punchy, have a really nice satisfying texture to them, they're crisp. As far as bass guitar and kick drums go, I feel like this set also does really well. The bass drum in Dire Straits' Money for Nothing has like I said, a really nice texture to it. It's nice and thumpy in the ears without dominating the mix. The same goes for the bass line. You can hear the ringing of the strings really nicely on this set. Overall, I would say while the bass on this set is boosted, it is far from what I would call a bass head presentation. I think it provides excellent texture, fun, punch, rumbliness, all those things that we love in bass. I think it's a great representation of planar bass. As far as the different nozzles go, honestly, there's really not all that much change in the bass with these nozzles. The short nozzles are just the tiniest bit bassier than the other 2, but there's really not a huge difference with them. If I had to rank them, I would say short red is the bassiest, followed by short black, then titanium, then gold. But as I said, it's very, very hard to notice the difference between them. I would say the 4 nozzles essentially sound the same in the bass. As with most planars, when we move into the mids, we find that the bass boost has left the mid-range essentially unbothered and tonally unaffected. And it accomplishes this, as is usual with planars, without tucking in that mid-bass and sacrificing some of that lower mid tonality, in my opinion. This results in a richer, more musical sound, and I really dig it. Juan Luis Guerra's A Pedir Su Mano with 440 sounds really fantastic on this set. It's a very busy track. You got this big kick drum, you've got bongos, you've got an entire Latin percussion section, you've got a couple of guitars, a bass guitar, a piano, a horn section, two different backing choirs, and then of course you have Juan Luis's vocals themselves. Despite all of that, the presentation here is extremely clean. It's lovely sounding. It has a very rich, sound to it. The instruments don't mask each other or cover each other up. You're able to pick out everything in the mix with no issues at all. And Juan Luis's vocals and their sort of unique tonality, I feel, are very well recreated here. No off tonality, no added husk, no sort of shrillness or nasal quality to it. Overall, a fantastic replay. As far as female vocals go, here is where the nozzles start to come into play a bit. So, Yoko Takahashi's Yoake Umarekuru Shoujo from the first season of Shakugan no Shana. I feel like it's one of the most underrated, great ending themes in my opinion. I think it sounds fantastic through this set. The soft yet powerful opening vocals are clean. The echo effect comes through really beautifully. I feel like the ET142 does an excellent job spotlighting the vocals over the rest of the mix without, making them completely overblown. Once the electronic backing track to the song comes in, you can still hear her sustained, powerful notes. It has all the gravitas in the vocals I expect it to. Overall, I feel like it's an awesome replay. The four nozzles do affect things here, and what I think they change is how forward and in your face the vocals are. So the shorter nozzles here are a little bit more forward with the fundamental vocal frequencies than the gold and the titanium ones here. It isn't a huge difference, but it is there, and I did notice it on tracks like this where the vocals are a bigger part of the mix. Overall, I would say the mids, as a general rule, on all four nozzles are very clean, very present, very accurate, excellent warmth, instrument separation. Bit of extra forwardness in some of the nozzles. I think it's very well done. I think the vocals are, a bit emphasized, but overall in balance with the rest of the mix. The upper mids and treble are where I feel the biggest differences between these nozzles are. So I'm going to try to describe it to the best of my ability here. For female vocal harmonics, this time I'm going to be using the live version of Nightwish's Bless the Child. Tarja's operatic vibrato and her sustained notes, I feel, are a great test of those upper vocal harmonics in the upper mids and lower treble. Those harmonics, along with the way she breathes into the microphone and the way she suddenly changes her pitch as the song rises and falls, I feel like they're very well represented on this set. Even with the most toned down nozzles being these short ones with the red rings, the harmonics are beautifully resolved, full of detail. They're sharp when they need to be sharp. They're soft when they need to be soft. And as you move up to these sort of short black nozzles here, you just get a little bit more of everything. You get a little bit more sharpness to the breaths into the microphone. The higher harmonics become a bit more prominent. Move up to the titanium nozzles, and it becomes even more present and emphasizes a pretty big jump from the short red ones to the titanium ones. I feel like some folks might call the presentation on the titanium and the gold nozzles shouty. I personally don't find them shouty, but I do think they're sort of riding on the edge a bit for me personally. I honestly like the presentation of the titanium nozzles. I think it's extremely impactful. The vibrato mix comes off as really, really shiny. It's very impactful. I know not everybody will prefer this, but for those people, hey, the short nozzles are there. Finally, you have the gold nozzles. They're basically the titanium nozzles with like a plus 1% on the harmonic energy. So just that tiny little bit more. Again, I didn't think it was too bad. Overall, I like all of these nozzles in terms of female vocal harmonics. The short red ones are, subtle, but still packed with detail. The titanium ones, I feel, are just the right amount of emphasis for me, even though I know some people will find them too shouty. I like them all. And in the middle, so you have sort of the short black nozzles as a happy middle ground between the potentially shouty and the potentially too quiet. That's right, I had to split the treble segment. Now we're going to talk about the percussion and upper instrument harmonics. I'm going to stick with Nightwish's Bless the Child, actually, but I'm going to move from the live version to the studio version from the Century Child album. In the studio version, I feel like the backing orchestra, the keyboards, the special effects, the cymbals, all of that comes through a little bit clearer and more present than on the live version. Whereas on the live version, the focus seems to be almost entirely on Tarja's vocals and on the environment of the live performance. Like with the female vocal harmonics, you can sort of pick your level of sparkle and shine with these nozzles here. The short red ones still have crisp cymbals with excellent stick definition. The guitars have sharp distortion overtones, and the higher notes on the violins and the keyboard have some really nice harmonics from the vibrato that's on them. Those higher keyboard notes have some really crisp attack and really quick decay that, again, produces some wonderful harmonics that I think come through pretty well on the short red nozzles. I don't find these fatiguing at all. The short black nozzles add in a bit of extra sparkle and shine, makes for a bit more of a dynamic sound, particularly with the keyboards and some of the cymbals. And then you have the titanium and gold nozzles, which in my opinion are full-on sparkly and might be fatiguing for some folks. I personally don't find either of these to be fatiguing, but I could see how these would be fatiguing for some people. I know when I posted the graph of this, a lot of people were like, man, that's a lot of energy up there. And yeah, it is. I personally didn't find these fatiguing or sibilant. The gold nozzles did come close in some tracks to being sibilant, but not quite what I would call really, really bad. All of the nozzles, even the short red ones, I thought featured a nice airy quality to the sound that I enjoyed while listening to this track. Overall, I would say the treble as a whole is a pick your poison sort of range. And this is how you would pick it. All four nozzles are distinct. The gold may be a little bit too similar to the titanium, but no matter your level of treble tolerance, you will find something here that will work for you. All right, now that that's over with, technicalities. With both a planar and a PZT under the hood, I expected the ET142 to kind of wow me with some technical chops, and honestly, it didn't disappoint. The low-frequency subtones generated by the Who in Shug Shug have an excellent rumble and visceral quality to them. It isn't surprising for a planar driver. I feel like they typically do extremely well with subtones like this. As far as the other end of the frequency scale goes, I feel like the PZT is actually very well controlled. I think it works very well with the planar together to create a very cohesive sense of sort of top-end detail and resolution. The second movement of Verdi's Requiem Mass, as performed by the Vienna Philharmonic, I feel is a great example. You've got the full orchestra going to town with an amazing choir, and nowhere in that entire epic performance, if you're listening on this set, do you lose the piccolos, the flutes, or the woodwinds, which can kind of get lost with those high notes with all of the harmonics flying around from all the brass and the strings. I feel like it's an excellent technical showing. I would put it right up there with the Letshuoer S15 for some of the best technicals I've heard out of a planar IEM. I think this does very, very well. I didn't find the PZT to be annoying, which I was expecting. I think it's very well controlled. It reminds me a lot of the PZT implementation from the Supermix 4. When it comes to stereo separation, the ET142, surprise, surprise, does very well. Simon and Garfunkel's rendition of Scarborough Fair is a beautiful piece. You have different singers, guitars, and instruments in each ear, and it's a great experience on this set, especially when the vocals are coming from the center, and it sort of puts the rest of the track into a spatial perspective, if you will. Speaking of spatial perspective, the ET142 also does really nicely with well-mastered tracks when it comes to perceived 3D soundstage. Muse's Knights of Sindonia, for example, lets you easily place the instruments around you. Drums sort of to the left and back, horns on the right, choir on the left and sort of forward, guitars in different ears and also sort of behind you. That whole track is a great experience on this set. Overall, I would say the ET142 has great stereo separation and really nice perceived 3D soundstage. So, the ET142. Like its little brother, the EW300, which provided two distinct and excellent tunings, this is a transformer. But unlike the EW300, the ET142 kicks that up a notch by providing not two, but three distinct tunings. I know there's four nozzles, but in my opinion, the tuning between the titanium and the gold is so similar, I just consider these one tuning, so cover that up with my thumb, and there you go. Three tunings. The titanium nozzles are a traditional bright V-shaped sound that I would say planars are known for. The short nozzles with the black rings are a sort of more toned down, balanced version of the planar V-shape. And the short nozzles with the red rings are the new warm planar tuning that has been, kind of popular lately. What this means is I have a lot of things to compare it to this time around. Again, please bear with me. Read the labels on the graphs that are coming up here very carefully. Squiglink only offers so many colors, and I had to recycle some for these graphs. So just keep that in mind while I'm looking at the graphs here. So go ahead and get started. The first set I want to talk about is actually no longer available for purchase, but I believe that the ET142 with the titanium nozzles is sort of a spiritual successor to this. It's the other planar with piezoelectric IEM in my collection, the Raptgo Hook X, and no, it's not the stock cable. I had to find one that was only the shells. While the Raptgo Hook X is technically a open-backed planar, listening to these two side by side with the ET142's titanium nozzles, they're basically identical to me. There's maybe a tiny bit of difference in the extreme treble, but really nothing super noticeable. So what I'll say is, if you're like me and you have saved searches on eBay and search bots for the HeadFi classifieds and Reddit's AV Exchange, trying to desperately find a decently priced Raptgo Hook X, this is another option for you. The Hook X are much lighter in terms of weight, and they do have like I said, a tiny bit more airiness to them in the upper treble, but it's really not a lot. Since you can't get the Hook X anymore, I'm going to go ahead and take it off of here because it's really not an option. I just wanted to say, if you've always wanted a Hook X, this is a fantastic, fantastic alternative. So, first real comparison, I'm going to bring in the original Letshuoer S12. You can see it right, come on, right there. In my Letshuoer Buyer's Guide video, I said that the S12 is essentially one of the best traditionally tuned planars on the market. It has that bright, airy, V-shaped tuning with the planar timbre that people tend to complain about. The ET142 with its titanium nozzles is actually very, very close in sound to the S12. The ET142 is, in my opinion, a bit smoother in the treble. The S12 comes across as having a bit more sparkle in some areas, but overall I feel like these two are actually very close. In terms of price, the S12 is half the price or less of the price of the ET142, especially when this one's on sale. But, the ET142 has more tunings up its sleeve, and get used to me saying that because it's going to come from me a lot in the upcoming comparisons. Let's go ahead and move to the Letshuoer S12 Pro. Both this and the 2024 edition, I'm going to, address them together since the tuning on them is essentially the same. As we know, the S12 Pro is a toned-down version of the S12. It adds a bit of bass, and it cuts down on the upper mids and the treble a bit, while retaining some of the airy brightness from the original S12. The ET142 can do this tuning as well. All you have to do is swap from the titanium nozzles to the short nozzles with the black rings. Again, the S12 Pro / S12 2024 will have a little bit more sparkle in some areas of the treble, but again, the ET142 is going to come across as overall smoother. At MSRP, the S12 2024 edition is only $20 less than the ET142, and both of them have a very similar accessories package. Both have hard cases, both have modular cables. The S12 Pro, I feel, is a bit of a better deal than either of them. But again, the ET142, with its 3 tunings, is the much more versatile choice. So keep that in mind. Next, we come to one of the new kids on the block, the newest version of Tangzhou's Empress. This is the Tangzhou Zetian Wu The Legend, priced at $260, making it the second most expensive IEM on the table. This will be getting a proper planar project video. It is coming, don't worry. The Empress has a much more subdued approach to bass and treble compared to the more V-shaped sets like the S12 Hook X and the S12 Pro. The ET142 can kinda sorta emulate the sound of the Empress, but not perfectly. It has more bass than the Empress with any of the nozzles, and with any of the nozzles, the Empress is still a bit more airy at the upper treble. Because of that extra energy in the upper treble, the Empress can come across as a bit fatiguing to some people, whereas the ET142 with the nozzles that come closest, which are the short black nozzles, isn't really fatiguing at all, at least to me. What I will say is if that more subtle bass presentation is something that you value, the ET142 won't offer it for you. All four of these nozzles feature, as I said, basically the same amount of bass, and all four of those is more bass than you will find on the Empress Legend here. Overall, the ET142, depending on what nozzle you pick, can be either more V-shaped or warmer than the Empress here. It isn't really a sound-alike. That said, like the two before this, the Empress doesn't have the versatility that the ET142 has, and controversially, I do prefer the cable on the ET142 to the one on the Empress. Next up, the most expensive IEM I have on the table, and one of my personal favorites, it's the $330 Letshuoer S15. For this one, you're going to have to put the short red ring nozzles on the ET142. Once you do that, the ET142 is essentially an S15 with a bass boost. It's funny because with those red ring nozzles, the ET142 is actually very similar to the Letshuoer S08 actually. That's a good thing. As I covered in my Letshuoer Buyer's Guide video, these two, or three actually, are some of my favorite planars currently on the market. And I think that the ET142 with the short red nozzles is a good addition to the club. I would say it sort of splits the difference between the S08 and the S15 here. It's a bit brighter than the S08, but it doesn't have as much energy in the upper mids as the S15 has. And it's bassier than the S15, but it doesn't quite thump and slam as much as the S08 does. I would say this 100% feels like a member of the warm planar family, including the new adopted sibling, the RDT10 Pro. While the T10 Pro and the S08, strike that, reverse it, are less than half the price of this, again, the ET142 has more tricks up its sleeve and I think can justify its price in that way. Finally, and let me rearrange things here a bit, we have what I feel is the ET142's true rival. It's another new planar set, and it will most likely be the subject of my next planar project video. It is the 7Hz Timeless 2, also much delayed and priced at $230, only $10 more than the ET142. Like the ET142, the Timeless 2 promises 4 different tunings with 4 different nozzles. And like the ET142, I personally consider it to be 3 different tunings since the gold and gray sort of plug-shaped nozzles provide very, very similar sounds. On the graph I'm going to pull up here, I have the brightest and the warmest tunings that the Timeless 2 can achieve. And I have the brightest and the warmest tunings that the ET142 can achieve. And as you can see, the ET142 gives you a wider range of tunings compared to the Timeless 2. The range that you can tune your upper mids and your treble compared to the Timeless 2 is wider. And as you can see, the warmest tuning on the Timeless 2 corresponds to the short black nozzles on the ET142, which means you basically have an extra warm setting on tap if you need it on the ET142. I'll elaborate more on this in my Timeless 2 review, but I feel like the nozzles on the Timeless 2 are more about fine-tuning your vocal and percussion harmonics in terms of timbre, whereas the nozzles on the ET142 are more about providing you with actual separate tunings to experiment with. I'm not saying the nozzles on the Timeless 2 aren't appreciated, because they very much are. They just don't give you as much range of customization as the nozzles on the ET142 do. So, in summary, if you're looking for a traditionally tuned planar, the S12 or the T10 are your best bets. If you want that sort of Goldilocks S12 Pro sound, the S12 Pro or the S12 2024 edition are your choices. If you want a more neutral-ish experience, the new Empress, the old Empress, or the Nice Heck F1 Pro will suit you just fine. And if you want something warmer, you're quickly becoming spoiled for choice. You've got the S08, the S15, and the T10. If you want a 7Hz Timeless that lets you have a bit more customizability in the way that your vocals and instrument harmonics come across, the Timeless 2 is honestly a pretty good choice. But if what you want is something that can do bright and sparkly, V-shaped and fun, and warm and relaxing, then the ET142 is really your only choice here. Okay, hopefully those comparisons were helpful, but for now, let's take these away and have a chat about where the ET142 is going to wind up on the Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale. Okay, so let's talk about what I think the ET142 represents in the sort of current planar IEM market. This is a sort of transformer, as I mentioned, that can morph into 3 of the common planar tunings. In fact, my wife made this awesome graphic. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up, and I'd like to talk about it for just a second. I went ahead and divided planars into the 4 branches of planar IEM tuning. So first up is the Department of Bass and Treble Excitement, which houses the more V-shaped tunings. So the S12 Pro, the S12 2024 edition, the MP145, and so on. Next is the High Frequency Accountability Commission, which houses the brighter, more traditionally tuned planars. So think things like the original S12, the Timeless, the Hook X, the F1 Pro, and so on. Next is the sort of Cozy Tone Advisory Council with the newer sort of warm, relaxing tuned planars that we've had lately, like the S08, the T10 Pro, and the S15. And then on the right there, we've got the Unpredictable Sound Doctrine Task Force, which I have as sort of a catch-all for the more uniquely tuned planars. The 2 versions of the Empress, the warm but still somehow bright Shows EP20, the kind of oddball V-shaped Kiwi Ears Medley, which is kind of weird. I find that these don't really fit into another category, and so they all go into the unique category. Please understand, you might disagree with some of these classifications. That's fine. This is just the way that I hear them and the way that I classify them. I'm not saying this is some sort of international standard or anything. The point I'm trying to make here is that depending on which nozzle you use with the ET142, this can go in any one of those first 3 categories. This is a very unique product, and it's a very interesting product for the planar market as a whole in its current form. I feel like most other reviewers or people who are really fans of the planar drivers love them for one of sort of 2 different and competing reasons. Group number 1 loves planars for their fast, articulate, airy detail at a low price point. They can have amazing levels of top-end detail and resolution for a single driver, and the technical performance they can achieve is absolutely incredible, even if it is a little fatiguing and results in that planar timbre that people complain about. The second group, on the other hand, loves planars because of what they can do in the low end, that planar bass that I love talking about. You can boost bass without affecting the mid-range tonality more easily with a planar than you can with a single DD or a single balanced armature. Basically, with a planar, you can get more bass without sacrificing the mid-range tonality. Both groups of people have different preferences, and they both have their preferred IEMs that suit that preference. The ET142, for the first time, I feel, offers an answer to both of those groups. You can finally recommend a planar that will satisfy both ideals of what a planar should be. You can get the technical prowess and all of the amazing detail and brightness of the brighter tuning, while also having the I can listen to it for 14 hours without getting fatigued potential of a warmer tuning with that lovely, lovely bass. You're just a nozzle swap away from having both. This could be the only planar you have in your collection, and it could let you sample a good variety of the tunings that are right now so popular on the market. I will agree the price is a bit steep. I personally feel like with so many good planars in the $75, $120 range, a planar at or above $200 is honestly a bit hard to justify for me personally, especially when all the drivers are essentially coming from the same place. The ET142 comes with a premium accessories package, a sturdy build, and more importantly, 3 tunings. If you treat this as a sort of 3-in-1, then you're really only paying, 75-ish bucks per tuning, which is honestly not that bad. For a one-and-done planar IEM, no other set provides the versatility or the value that this set can. Maybe this is the bias talking, maybe I'm just a planar fanboy, maybe I love IEMs that let you customize your sound the way you like, but I'm going to put the ET142 in you should buy this. And I understand, it's $220. That's a hard price to swallow for a lot of people these days. But I honestly feel like this set is worth it. It gives you so much freedom to switch things up however you want. And unlike a lot of sets with, tuning nozzles or switches or different things to try, I genuinely feel like, with the exception of the gold nozzle, all of these nozzles sound fantastic in their own right. ever since I got the new nozzles, the full retail packaging, this set has spent a lot of time in my ears. As I said, my two favorite nozzles are the ones up top here, the titanium and the short red nozzles. I just love switching between them. It's really nice. The short black ones, honestly, are also really good. Put on some disco or some R&B tracks with some female vocalists on these, and the short black shells really come into their own. I like it. So, you already know the answer to this question, but I have to ask it anyway. Do I recommend the Simgot ET142? Yes, and in kind of a big way. You all know I like to put IEMs in "you should buy this" if I believe they are a good value and I think they offer something that absolutely anybody can enjoy or even love. The ET142 might literally be for just about anybody. Love planar timber? Titanium nozzles all day. Hate planar timber? Short red nozzles for you. Fall somewhere in the middle? Hey, short black nozzles are the ones for you. Now, that being said, there are some people who I necessarily wouldn't recommend this for. If you prefer a more subdued sub-bass presentation, or bass presentation period, all four nozzles, as I mentioned, have that boosted low end. As I said, I don't think it's full-on bass head, but it is boosted, so if you prefer a leaner, more neutral bass presentation, this is not what you're going to get here. This also isn't for people who are looking for a neutral tuned set. The most neutral sounding nozzle, I would say, is the short one with the black rings, this one. And even that has boosted bass and a bit more highs than I personally would classify as neutral. So don't get this if you're looking for something neutral. But if you can afford the $220 price tag, this thing is sort of the ultimate planar IEM. It addresses all of the strengths of the driver and allows you to choose how you want to experience it. Do you prefer the top end? Do you prefer the bottom end? Take your pick. Something in the middle? Go for it. This could literally be the first and only planar IEM in your collection. Its sort of chameleon nature lets it show you kind of how other planars sound. It might not be the best warm planar. It might not be the best V-shaped planar. It might not be the best bright planar, but it's darn close to being the best warm, the best V-shaped, the best, bright. And I think that makes it an absolute great value at MSRP, at least in my book. Like I said, $75 a tuning. That being said, I am super excited for 11/11 or the summer sales to see what kind of discounts this is going to get, because I love discounts, I love sales. Alrighty, that's going to wrap this one up. Sorry if this turned kind of into a rant on the state of the planar IEM market, but I felt that sort of context was needed to show you what I think the true strength and the true value of this set is and how awesome I think this set is. I want to say thank you very much to Simgot for sending me a pre-production unit to see what I thought of it, and thank you again for listening to the feedback that I and my peers gave you. I think that's a sign of a good company. You listen to the customers. To all of you guys watching, to my audience, I will say again, the simple fact that they sent me a pre-production unit and asked me what I thought of it sort of adds some bias to this review. So please, just for me, go out and find other reviews of this set before you make your purchasing decision. I wanted to add this to the end of this video to make sure that the relationship between this set and me is completely clear, because y'all know I love being upfront with you guys. But that's it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with AudioAmigoReviews. I'll catch y'all next time.